Our next guest says that zero-click searches, where users are finding answers directly on search engines and AI summaries, are killing the internet's business model. Joe and I were actually talking about this earlier. Matthew Prince is here. He's the co-founder and CEO of Cloudflare. Good morning to you. It's long been described as the blue link economy, as in you go onto Google, you put the search in, you get all the blue links, you click on one, and Google often makes money if you hit one of the sponsored ones. You think that that whole economy is effectively going to be going under here?
Yeah, Andrew, I think that the economy is for sure changing. The best data that we have on this is if you look back 10 years ago, essentially for every 2 pages that Google would crawl, they would send CNBC, anyone who is creating content, 1 visitor for that. The rate that Google crawls at hasn't changed, and yet 6 months ago, the rate was now up to 6 pages scraped for every 1 visitor, and it's accelerated that now it's actually 15 scrapes for every 1 visitor. And what's changing is not that fewer people are searching the internet, it's not that Google is scraping more, it's that more and more of the answers to Google are being answered right on Google's page. That AI box at the top of Google is now absorbing that content that would have gone to the original content creators. And that's the good news for content creators. If you look at OpenAI 6 months ago, it was 250 scrapes to 1 visitor. If you look at it today, it's almost 1,500 scrapes to 1 visitor. And what that means is that if you're making money through subscriptions, through advertising, any of the things that content creators are doing today, visitors aren't going to be seeing those ads. They're not going to be buying those subscriptions anymore. And that means it's going to be much, much harder for you to be a content creator.
So, Matthew, but one of the questions that I have is the economics of this shift when the user starts to pay. So, for example, I'm a subscriber now to ChatGPT. I think I'm a subscriber to Gemini. Actually, I've got a subscription, I believe, also to Anthropic. But I'm in an unusual and blessed place to be able to pay for these services. Longer term, how are the economics of these businesses going to work if there is no advertising and if things are not being sent back to other people?
Well, I think there may be advertising. The advertising might show up in the AI companies, but you're reading that derivative content. You're not reading the original content. Imagine that, I went and said, I'm not going to watch CNBC anymore. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, what are all the interesting things that
Blasphemy.
Don't even say it as an example.
As an example, but
don't even say that.
Okay, so but then the question, and by the way, you're right on. As a content creator, and that's what we do for a living, there is a fundamental question about whether these services or others ultimately should be paying for some kind of access to this information. And then the question is, what does that business model look like, do you think? And is there any chance of a model ever even being created? Or are the tech companies, like they have in the past, moving so quickly that there's really no opportunity? And by the time something gets settled in court 10 years later, the horse is out of the barn?
I think if the answer is court, then you're right. The horse will be out of the barn. But I think the answer can be actually technology. You can use services like Cloudflare, and this is what we're working with the largest content creators to do, to say, you can't access my content if you're an AI crawler unless you pay me for that content. And that's exactly what the future has to be. The fuel that runs these AI engines is original content. So that content has to get created in order for these AI engines to work. And if you look at the most thoughtful AI companies that are out there, they understand that they have to pay for content. Someone like OpenAI has actually done content deals with a lot of people, but they can't be the suckers. They can't be the only ones paying when their competitors aren't. So what content creators have to do is restrict access to content, create that scarcity, and say, you're not going to get my content unless you're actually paying me for creating that content.
Some people had looked at those OpenAI deals and thought that was just sort of a way station, sort of something to sort of get over the hump. There is going to be a day where you might be able to remove the content creators completely. I know of a number of sort of, I wouldn't call them news organizations, but sort of news organizations that think that they can sort of cobble together the news, if you will, from not even news content creators, but maybe even, and this is what I think Elon Musk to some degree thinks is possible, to be able to create it off of something like an X, and what you think that means.
Well, I think in that case, so first of all, I actually am much more optimistic about the future of content creators. I think if content is just sort of randomly strung together, quick hitting, headline first content, the stuff that has sort of driven a lot of the web over the last little bit, I think that is going away. But original content that is actually highly valuable is, I think, going to be more valuable in this future. I'll give you an example. I live a lot of the year in Park City, Utah. I'm a skier. I care enormously whether it snowed more on the east side of the mountain or the west side of the mountain if I'm going to go out skiing. And I pay for a service that's actually going to tell me that. If I'm going to use an AI engine, I'm going to pay for the AI engine that actually has the exclusive access to that unique content. And for that content creator, that weather forecaster that is there doing the hard work in order to generate that content, for someone like you who's doing really unique, you're the hardest working guy in the financial press. Like, that's the sort of thing where I think AI companies are going to value that content. They're going to be willing to do deals for that content, but it has to be something where there is exclusivity, where you don't do that for everyone that's out there, and that you actually restrict the access for some of those, for any of the AI companies that are not paying you for the original content you create.